This is the story of how a $500 drone built from commercial hobby parts can destroy a tank worth $4 million, and how a $250,000 boat without a crew has sunk warships worth $65 million. Over the past 4 years, cheap, mass-produced drones have rewritten the economics of modern warfare, and the implications are still unfolding right now across Ukraine, the Black Sea, and the Red Sea. Everything flows from one core idea called cost asymmetry. A first-person view, AFPV, kamikaze drone, the kind Ukrainian soldiers assemble from Chinese components, runs somewhere between $400 and $800. That same drone can take out a T-72 tank worth $1 to $2 million, a Ka-52 attack helicopter worth around $16 million, or a Buk air defense launcher worth tens of millions of dollars, which pushes the ratio of attacker cost to target cost beyond 80,000 to 1. Ukraine's former commander-in-chief, Valery Zaluzhny, put it plainly in September of 2025, when he pointed out that an FPV drone costs about 10% of what a single artillery grenade costs, meaning you can buy roughly 10 drones for the price of one shell. Back in 2022, Ukrainian official Mikhailo Fedorov, now Minister of Defense, summarized the entire revolution in a single line when he noted that a $500 drone can destroy an occupier's tank worth $3 to $5 million. That math, repeated millions of times, is what has reshaped warfare. Consider the land war first, because the numbers there are staggering. According to the Royal United Services Institute in London, tactical drones now account for 60 to 70% of all damaged or destroyed Russian military systems, outpacing artillery, mines, and tanks combined. Figures published by the U.S. Army suggest that drones caused between 60 and 80% of all combat casualties in 2025. Oryx, the open-source intelligence project that counts only losses it can visually verify, has confirmed more than 4,300 Russian tanks destroyed or captured, along with over 8,700 infantry fighting vehicles and more than 21,000 pieces of equipment in total since the invasion began. And the true numbers almost certainly run higher. How did we arrive here? Back in early 2022, Ukrainian soldiers were buying commercial DJI Mavic quadcopters off the shelf, strapping 3D printed harnesses onto them, and dropping modified grenades by hand, which was essentially improvised warfare. By 2023, that improvisation shifted to purpose-built FP5 kamikaze drones selling for $400 to $500 each, and the industry behind them exploded. Ukraine scaled from 8 domestic drone companies at the start of the war to more than 500 manufacturers, with the country now producing between 2.5 million and 3 million military drones each year, and 96% of that production happening on Ukrainian soil. Forces in the field deploy roughly 9,000 drones every single day. And during 1 month in late 2024, Ukrainian operators recorded 339,000 individual drone flight missions. Zaluzhny described what this feels like for anyone caught in it, saying that the safe rear no longer exists. Everything within 40 kilometers of the front line lives under constant threat of drone and artillery strikes. The story at sea is even more dramatic, and this is where cheap technology genuinely broke a navy. Russia's Black Sea Fleet ranked among the world's major naval formations, while Ukraine, by contrast, had almost no navy to speak of. Over the past 3 years, Ukrainian forces have sunk or severely damaged at least 15 Russian vessels using unmanned surface drones alone, and they have functionally driven the entire Black Sea Fleet out of its historic base at Sevastopol. The weapon that pulled this off is called the Magura Fuv, a remote-controlled explosive boat about the size of a jet ski with a carbon fiber hull that sits only half a meter above the waterline, which makes it nearly invisible to radar. Each one costs around $250,000. A second Ukrainian design, the Sea Baby, comes in even cheaper at $200,000 to $4,000, and both are built domestically and operated by a special forces unit under Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Directorate called Group 13. What they accomplished borders on the unbelievable. On the night of January 31st into February 1st, 2024, a swarm of 6 or more Magura V-5 drones attacked the Russian corvette Ivanovets off Crimea and sent her to the bottom, making her the first warship in history confirmed sunk by unmanned surface vessels. 2 weeks later, on February 14, 2024, the landing ship Caesar Kunikov went down the same way, and 3 weeks after that, on March 5, 2024, the patrol ship Sergei Kotov, worth around $65 million, joined them on the seabed. By July of 2024, the last major Russian warship had pulled out of Sevastopol entirely. General David Petraeus called this an extraordinary tribute to the Ukrainian tech sector, noting that Ukraine, without any meaningful naval vessels of its own, had sunk over 1/3 of the Russian Black Sea Fleet and forced it to withdraw. The innovation kept coming. December of 2024 brought the first time an uncrewed surface vessel destroyed an aircraft, when a Magura V-7 drone boat fired an air-to-air missile and shot down a Russian Mi-8 helicopter. Then in December of 2025, Ukraine revealed an underwater variant called the Sea Baby that reportedly struck a Russian Kilo-class submarine in Novorossiysk, marking the first underwater drone attack in naval history. One point of precision matters here, because this gets mixed up constantly. The Russian cruiser Moskva, which sank in April of 2022, went down to Neptune anti-ship missiles, not drones. The drone chapter of this story starts after that. The third theater is the Red Sea, and this is where the cost problem flips on its head. Starting in November of 2023, the Houthis in Yemen began attacking commercial shipping with Iranian-designed drones, costing between $2,000 and $20,000 each, and the U.S. Navy deployed 26 warships to defend that shipping lane. Here is where the math turns painful. Shooting down a $2,000 drone required firing SM-2 interceptor missiles that cost $2.1 million each, or SM-6 missiles that cost $3.9 million each. Vice Admiral Brendan McLean confirmed that over 15 months, the Navy fired more than 200 interceptor missiles. Navy Secretary Carlos Del Toro told the Senate in April of 2024 that U.S. forces had burned through nearly $1 billion in munitions defending against the Houthis, and Rand Corporation later confirmed that figure in 2025. The think tank JINSA called this strategy reactive whack-a-mole and warned it could not be sustained. They had a point. Cost asymmetry was now running in reverse, with the cheap side imposing ruinous costs on the expensive side just by forcing them to keep shooting. That campaign ended in May of 2025 with an Oman-mediated ceasefire, but the lesson had been absorbed. Since then, the United States has begun deploying its own reverse-engineered Shahed-style drone called the Lucas, built at about $35,000 per unit, which saw its first combat use in February of 2026. How has the Pentagon responded more broadly? Back in August of 2023, then Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks announced the Replicator Initiative, with the goal of fielding thousands of autonomous systems. When the deadline hit in August of 2025, it had delivered hundreds rather than thousands. In July of 2025, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth issued a memo titled Unleashing U.S. Military Drone Dominance. He wrote that drones are the biggest battlefield innovation in a generation, accounting for most of this year's casualties in Ukraine. He said, "Our adversaries collectively produce millions of cheap drones each year." Later, in December of 2025, the Pentagon announced the Drone Dominance Program, a $1 billion effort to procure more than 200,000 drones. Anduril Industries, founded by Palmer Luckey and valued at around $60 billion, began producing its Fury combat aircraft at a new 5 million square foot factory in Ohio in March of 2026. Is this really a revolution, or is some of it hype? Serious skeptics exist, and their arguments deserve a fair hearing. Stephen Biddle of Columbia University argues that public perceptions of FPV drone lethality are, in his words, wildly exaggerated. He points to survivorship bias as the reason, because we see the videos of successful strikes, but rarely the failures. RUSI reported that between 60 and 80% of Ukrainian FPV drones failed to reach their targets, largely because of Russian electronic warfare. At the Battle of Bakhmut, Russian jamming crushed commercial drone range from 3 kilometers down to just 500 meters. By mid-2023, Ukraine was losing around 10,000 drones per month to electronic warfare. Stacie Pettyjohn of the Center for a New American Security has written that drones have not fundamentally altered the character of war, and that large numbers of small drones simply cannot match the volume of fire from traditional artillery. Michael Kofman of Carnegie adds a point that cuts deep. Drone warfare itself remains manpower intensive. You cannot have a battlefield of just drones, and Ukraine's drone advantage has eroded as Russia has achieved closer parity. The counter to the skeptics is already arriving in the form of new technology. Fiber-optic drones, first fielded by Russia in the spring of 2024, use a thin cable that unspools during flight and carries video and control signals as light, which means they cannot be jammed. They emit no radio signals, and currently, no scalable countermeasures exist against them. Ukraine now fields 40 or more certified fiber-optic drone models from 11 different companies. AI-guided drones with terminal targeting can lock onto tanks from a kilometer away and strike through jamming. In July of 2025, Auterion AI-equipped drones destroyed a Russian tank column that had been specifically outfitted with jammers. Where does all of this leave us in 2026? Ukrainian forces deploy around 9,000 drones every day, while Russia launched more than 38,000 Shahed-type drones against Ukraine during 2025. Only 7 missile-armed warships remain in the Russian Black Sea Fleet. China's drone output, according to U.S. Representative Pat Harrigan, runs at least 4 times what the United States spends. The number of drone manufacturing companies worldwide jumped from 6 in 2022 to more than 200 by 2024. Pentagon Chief Technology Officer Emil Michael said it directly at the Reagan Forum in December of 2025. The front lines of a conflict over territory are robot on robot now. That is what the drone revolution actually means. Drones have not replaced every other weapon. Tanks still exist, artillery still matters, and soldiers still hold ground. What has changed is the economics, because for the lifetime cost of a single F-35, you can purchase tens of thousands of kamikaze drones. When a $500 quadcopter reliably destroys a $4 million tank, when a $200,000 boat sinks a $65 million warship, when a $2,000 Houthi drone forces a navy to burn through $1 billion in interceptors, something fundamental has shifted underneath the entire structure of modern war. Zaluzhny said it best when he declared that the traditional and familiar types of weapons that have determined the nature of war for decades have become history. Whether that is fully true or only half true, every major military on Earth is now racing to adapt, because nobody can afford to be the side paying millions to destroy something that cost hundreds.